Welcome to the Lost Boys of Found Fathers podcast. I'm Gabriel O'Sullivan, and joining me is my co-host and friend, Will Haycox. We are men who have suffered the loss of a child, and through this production, we desire to offer encouragement, strength, and hope to our fellow brothers who have traveled the same journey. Good morning, Will.
Good morning, Mr. Gabe.
So, as Will sits down to join us at the table, we're going to continue in this series entitled "Standing Firm." In the aftermath, the armor of God for men who mourn. And we go, like we said last time, this is also just for men, right? Standing firm. This episode, we're going to really be talking about being armed for the fight. We're taking this from Ephesians 6, 10 through 20. This episode, we're going to kind of get into some of that armor of God in verses 14 through 15 in chapter 6 of Ephesians. Definitely encourage you guys to go back and read that. It's good stuff, and we're going to kind of get through it right now. What are we doing here? We're going to be explaining how the first three pieces of armor guard the heart and prepare the mind in the midst of battle, in the midst of grief, in the midst of every day, because we need God's armor surrounding us and protecting us every day. And so the thought here is like a soldier getting ready for battle. I was not in this service. I'm so thankful for our men and women who do serve in our armed forces and of course, first responders and all. And I just look up to them a lot, because they answered the call and they went out and served us. And one thing that I hear when I listen to Jocko podcast a lot, we've talked about that on this show, and almost every show where he's got a fellow service member on there, they will mention their gear, and they'll mention if they were about to go out for a battle or to go on some type of mission, they will talk about how their pre-mission routine included checking their gear, going over their gear, making sure they had all their right equipment, make sure it was in working order, make sure they had batteries that they needed batteries for whatever they need batteries for. And so this is not something that is like an old foreign concept. This is what our warriors still do to this day, is they want to make sure that they are protected and that they have their gear in the right place and in the working order. And we want to make sure that mentally and spiritually we have our spiritual armor battle prepared and that's ready, and that we're taking full advantage of it, because a Kevlar vest does me no good if I leave it in the truck, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm wearing it, that's good. If I'm not wearing it, what is it doing for me, right? And so that's kind of where we're going to be thinking in these couple of verses right here. Mm-hmm. Anything you want to bring in there as we start, and before we kind of get into Scripture?
I'll try to make it quick, but the first thing that popped in my mind when you talk about a soldier being ready for battle and putting on their armor is put on good and necessary armor, and don't just let the world saddle you with whatever they think is best.
Oh, and wow. That's good.
The first thought I had there, biblical example, rare for me. I know I like to be all over the place with my stuff. If you think about David when he fought Goliath, that he volunteers to go out and fight Goliath, and Saul's like, who is this guy? They bring him in, he looks at him and he's like, man, look at this midget, which we know from the Bible that Saul was a head taller than everyone else, so Saul was a big dude. And he looks at David and he's like, this little kid, he's not going to make it, put him in my armor. And so there's the story there that they put David in Saul's armor, and again, Saul is apparently a big guy. We don't know how big David is, but Saul is a head taller than everyone else. You can imagine, unless he's NBA player, like some of these Kevin Durant type of guys, he's 7 foot and 200 pounds. He's probably a big guy, big barrel-chested, strong guy. And David is still a youth, and so he's putting him in all this armor. And David, the armor bearer is like, hey, we made you strong now. You're in the best armor we got in our whole kingdom. It's our king's armor. And David's like, take this off me. I can't even move in this. Mm-hmm. And so to make that quick, and then to go back to your notes, I would just say, that armor, David being saddled with Saul's armor, was not God saying, hey, put this armor on. This is what I have provided for you. It was worldly wisdom of Saul and his armor bearers saying, this is what we've made to protect ourselves. This is the best thing. This is what you need. So I would just equate that to worldly wisdom in general. That whether you're going to a secular therapist or someone like that is that has their place and has their own qualifications, and they can treat the things that they're trained to treat. They're not trained to treat spiritual illnesses. They're not qualified to help you through something that is a spiritual battle, spiritual warfare, and all they're going to do is end up giving you some pills that are ultimately going to bring more issues and more side effects. So not to rail against that, but I would just say don't let yourself go through losing a child and see it as a fully material thing that can only be dealt with other material substances or truths. And I say material as opposed to spiritual, that losing a child is a real physical thing, but it's also a very spiritual battle that you have to go through. So I'll get off of that, but I'll just say that was the first thing that popped in mind when you're talking about a soldier being armed for battle. It's like, put on the right armor. Don't put on whatever armor is available to you without praying through it and discerning what armor you need for each battle.
That's good. And I think, again, we've got to recognize, like you said, what armor is necessary for each battle, right? And so, like, we're definitely not saying counseling's not good. We're not saying that some people, don't, have to go the psychiatry route sometimes. Like, what we are saying is that, like, we've got to make sure that we're going to the right person for help. And that we're not just listening to the world's wisdom.
Yeah. I mean, to make that easier, sorry to cut you off, but I want to throw it back to you real quick. You're a chiropractor, and you're very skilled at what you do. I know because I've been your patient. But if I come to you with, like, a mostly severed arm, or I come to you with, like, a huge gash in my neck, and I'm like, Gabe, can you fix this? And you're like, I don't think manipulation of your spine is going to help your carotid. So I'm bringing it to the world, but, like, I'm not coming to you to deal with something outside of your expertise. So it's the same thing for the counseling and the therapy you get.
Yeah, and that happens. Sometimes people come to me and I'm like, that's, you're not, no. We're
911.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to call the ambulance right now, whatever. So good point there. And that, you talk about the David example. It makes me think, too, of kind of modern day, like that movie. Of course, everything in my life revolves around movies. I've watched too much in my life, and which is probably why I get on my kids for watching movies and TV now, because I'm like, don't be like your father and spend all of your time. Yeah. Well, yes, this one was good. Black Hawk Down.
Lessons.
Black Hawk Down. Incredible movie.
Probably not age appropriate for your kids.
Yeah, I'm not gonna let them watch that. But it makes me, at the very end of the movie, this guy was like Delta Force guy, and he his armor was his gun. Like, that was it. Like, the other guys are wearing all these special gear and Kevlar vests and helmets and the whole thing, and all this communications stuff, and this guy kind of made me think of David fighting Goliath, right? He's just, like, so trained that he's like, this is all I need right here. I need my gun. Like David just was like, I just need my slingshot. So verse 14, chapter 6 of Ephesians says, stand firm then. So I'm going to preface this. Last episode, go back and listen to it. We talked about the necessity to stand firm instead of just running and retreating. Okay, God's called us to be men that stand firm in advance, not to just run back and retreat and expose ourselves and our families to the enemy. So verse 14 says, stand firm then with the belt of truth buckled around your waist. We're going to pause right there. Belt of truth. Talk to me about the belt of truth, Will. What does that mean?
I would say first, don't get hung up on belt, breastplate, sword, helmet. Like, some of them do have significance. The sword of the Spirit being used to cut through the lies of the evil one. Like, there's significance to that. But, like, the belt part, don't get caught up on that. But the belt of truth, the idea there is, this is an allegory. This is an example of how you need to arm yourself for battle when it's a spiritual battle. And the belt of truth just means you surround your body with the truth of the Lord, so that when the lies of the enemy come against you, you have your defense of the truth up. Whether you want to see that as a shield, whether you want to see that as, a belt, something, if we are taking it a little more literally, your belt is like holding your outfit together. Today it holds your pants up. So like you're without your belt, like you're unguarded, you're ungirdled, your pants can fall down, like you'll be exposed. So you're putting on the truth and surrounding yourself with it so that no matter what comes, you have an anchor, you stand firm in the truth.
That's awesome. And it makes me think, like you say, about your pants can fall down. Like back in the day, I would assume that maybe if they weren't wearing pants or wearing some kind of toga like apparatus or whatever, and that those things would be kind of long and flowy, and so it seems like you would want to have that belt to maybe not only carry your sword sheath, right, but then also to keep your clothing that might generally be down to your ankles, we'll say, cinched up, so that way you could run effectively and move appropriately. Because if if you ever try to attack somebody in your night robe, it's probably not very easy, right? And so you want to have that thing kind of pulled up and cinched up, so that way your legs can move freely and you can actually advance. And so I think there's probably somewhat of a metaphor right there that Paul was using, and you kept using the word the truth. And I think the is super important there, because it's not like in today's society, it's not your truth, right? The Bible is the truth, okay? And so that's why Paul is saying with the belt of truth. So he's encouraging us like to know the word, to know what God says, because that's what's going to protect us. Because the enemy is going to come at us with lies, and we want to make sure that we know the difference between truth, and we know the difference between the truth and the lies that are going to come at us. Because there's a lot of lies coming at you, like you said. Even sometimes, unfortunately, with secular counseling, man, there can be some serious lies that come to people when that counseling is not based on biblical truth, when it's based on pop culture, or it's based on Eastern mysticism or something to that effect. That can really get people jacked up. And so we want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves with God's truth.
Yeah, and then I would say like the next thing there, you read stand firm then with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, and the next sentences, or the next section there is with the breastplate of righteousness in place. And so the breastplate of righteousness is, again, easiest way to understand it. What is righteousness? Righteousness is being in right standing with God, standing for the truth, knowing what you are doing is right because God said it is right. And it goes hand in hand with truth, that there is one truth. There is an objective, absolute truth about everything that God has given us because He created the world. Then that means there is one path of righteousness, and righteousness is, to make my own definition here, righteousness is doing what the truth says is right. And so your righteousness, you are righteous when you believe what God says about Himself. Like the Old Testament idea is like Abraham believed God and it was counted to him as righteousness. So we are made righteous now after Christ because we believe the truth that Christ revealed. We believe the truth that Christ was, and we are counted, we are given righteousness even though we are not righteous in ourselves because of what Jesus did. And God chose to honor before Jesus came to the earth. He chose to honor and have mercy on those like Abraham, like Moses, who believed him when he told them, this is how the world is, this is what I want to do, this is what I want you to do. This is the covenant I'm making between myself and you, Abraham. They believed him, and he imputed, or he counted righteousness for them, though they were not righteous. So the idea of the breastplate of righteousness is, the truth, you have the belt of truth buckled around your body, and now you're putting on this breastplate that guards your heart, that is righteousness. So you know the truth and you're doing the truth, and you're guarding against, again, the way that righteousness is defeated is you start to disbelieve the truth, and when your beliefs will lead to your actions. So when you start to disbelieve the truth, now you're starting to, you're not doing the good things the truth tells you to do, and you are doing the bad things that the truth tells you not to do. So like we talk about in verse 11 and 12 that our enemies, the powers of the dark world, the spiritual forces of evil, they're going to come against you with temptation to not believe God, to not trust your wife, to not open up to your wife, to be unkind to those around you. And if you start doing those things, you're going to be bitter, you're going to have self-destructive habits, you're going to cope by whatever your personal temptation is, whether it's seeking a relationship outside of your home because there's not the baggage of dealing with losing a child with your wife, whether it's drinking, whether it's some sort of drug, whether it's burying yourself in work. You are turning away from the truth, which says rely on God. He's done everything. He's your refuge. He is the truth. He will give you hope. And you're turning away from all these things, and you're turning towards lies if you don't have on the breastplate, the protection of righteousness.
Man, that's good stuff right there. And again, guarding our heart, right? The Bible says that our heart is the wellspring of life. And so we're wanting to make sure that we're guarding our heart with that breastplate of righteousness. And again, it's not us just doing that on our own. It's taking on Christ's righteousness because of our faith in Him, like you said, and then out of the overflow of that belief and that of Him being Lord of our life, then we live righteously, and it's a both and, kind of like we talked last episode too. It's like, okay, it's taking on God's armor, but then we have to like do something with that, right? And so that's the having Christ's righteousness in place of ours, but then also living out that righteousness. And I love that, Will. Next verse 15, next phrase says, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. And so, certainly if we're talking about battle here, you're going on the battlefield, I would estimate you do not want your feet to be exposed and to not be protected. I mean, we think about, I don't know what it was like being a Roman soldier. I don't know, it's like being any kind of soldier. But I've watched Forrest Gump. Okay, so
same thing.
There we go. Forrest Gump, right? Forrest Gump gets to Vietnam, as he says. And the first thing that Lieutenant Dan says to him, he starts talking to him about taking care of his feet. He was like, number one rule, take care of your feet. Talks about changing socks. Talks about making sure his boots are in good shape because he knows.
Stop, change your socks.
There we go. That's right. Every time we stop, change your socks, because he knows that if his soldiers' feet aren't in good shape, then they're going to be in a mess, right? They're not going to be able to protect or advance. And again, we go back to old World War I, right? Trench foot was one of the main issues there. Okay, and so obviously, for any soldier, you got to be able to take care of your feet, and you got to have your feet in shape, and they got to be protected. And so, to use that analogy, it says with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. So again, Paul is reminding us, like, it's not just about you making yourself ready with some positive mental attitude affirmations, which I'm not saying that's all bad. We talked about last episode. I do some of that every morning with scripture, with good words. I think that's important. But if I left it at that, right? Or if Paul, he's talking to people that are kind of growing up in this Greek Roman culture where it could have been like, for them, it could have been these early Christians. They could have thought, well, okay, I need to have faith in Jesus, but I also need to go to the temple of Artemis every day and do whatever she tells me to do. Or then I need to go to, over to Hercules' shrine and do X, Y, or Z for them. So
Hercules, cool story. Don't worship.
There you go. That's right. And so he's saying, with your feet fitted with the readiness of the gospel, right? That's where we've got to make sure that we are protected with the truth of the gospel, right? That Jesus is God, that He died on the cross for our sins, that He rose after 3 days, that our faith in Him is what gives us eternal life and gives us hope for every day. And when we have that, as a foundation for us, literally a foundation for us, then we're able to advance in our day and stand our ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just flipping through some translations here to see what else they had, and for whatever reason, the ones preloaded in this app are NIV, good, English Standard Version, good, King James, good, and the New Living Translation. Not sure why that's on here. I'm not saying it's worthless. It's just I'm not biggest on paraphrases, but I like what it says here. It says, for shoes, put on the peace that comes from the good news so that you'll be fully prepared, instead of readiness. And then here in the King James, it says, I'm going to read the whole 14 and 15 because I just like the way it sounds. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. So you say you have, what's the word you have? Readiness, and this has preparation and the peace of the good news. So like all of that together, you are, like you said, everything starts at your feet. And if you are, you're taking the human body, this as someone who works with the body, like if your feet are screwed up, I would say you've seen a whole lot more people than I've seen, but the bit that I know about feet, if your feet are screwed up, I don't know that there's ever a situation in which your whole body's not going to be messed up eventually.
Yeah, that's the foundation. All right.
And if you're, it's like, I don't know the word of it, what's it, chain something?
Kinetic chain.
Mm-hmm. So like if your feet are messed up, your body's going to compensate. Your ankles are going to be messed up. When your ankles are messed up, your body's going to compensate, and one or both knees are going to be messed up. And then you go up that chain, your hips are going to be messed up, your lower back, your mid back, your upper back, your neck. And so your feet can be screwed up. And I know this in part because I've lived it. Your feet can be screwed up, and that can eventually manifest in terrible headaches and tightness in your neck and your shoulders and your shoulder blades, and just problems everywhere. So I went like 3 years ago, I kind of went on this like health journey for my feet, where I started responding or rejecting the world's truth on protecting your feet, on more cushioning, arch support, heel to toe drop that makes it easier for you to walk and run. And so I've kind of transitioned. I'm not perfectly there, but I've transitioned to what they call minimalist shoes. And the idea is like your feet were created by God, or some people say evolved so that we could run well. But your feet are already like one of the most complicated mechanisms in your body, and the way that they work, and all the different tendons and everything working the way it does, and springs. And so you are allowing your feet to do what God created them to do. When you strip away all this extra stuff that we put on them as modern people. And so by the same token, when you are having your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace, you are allowing the Lord to help your body do what it's supposed to do, by, just like you were saying, Gabe, you have stability in the gospel. You are prepared. Use these different words that are in different translations. You're prepared, you're ready, you're capable of moving, because your body is stable on this. I've heard like the sandals of peace and all these different, sandals of readiness, and there's different translations. But you've strapped on your footwear so that you can go out for a run, so that you can, go through town and do what you need to do, run your errands. And if you're not prepared, if you're walking around barefoot and you haven't, I'm pro barefoot, but if you haven't protected your feet, if you haven't prepared by getting your body ready for that, you're going to end up walking on 150 degree asphalt barefoot and get hurt. Or you're going to end up going from 1.5 inch thick soles on your shoes to walking around barefoot. Your body's not used to it. You're going to hurt your feet, your knees, your hips, and everything else. So to bring that back to what we're talking about here, we're getting this readiness from the gospel. This not just like God gives you preparation so you can take off when you need to take off, but he's giving you this readiness, this peace, this preparation in the gospel truth, which says God loved the world so much that he sent his only son here who loved us enough to die for us. God, like we were talking about, imputing righteousness to us. God looked at Jesus and said, I love you so much and I love the world so much that I'm going to put the sin of the world on you, Jesus, and you die, you're raised, and my wrath against these people who believe in you are satisfied. So spiritually, now we are ready to go out and fight the Lord's battles because we're secure in who we are. And if we are not secure in who we are and we don't understand the gospel, we don't know what the gospel says about us and our identity, we're constantly wondering, like, where am I with God? Like, it's like a bad relationship. You don't communicate. It's like, I think I like my girlfriend. I'm pretty sure she likes me, but you're the teenager, and maybe I was like maybe the first generation that got a lot of texting when you were dating, but you were back in the easier times. Y'all didn't have to text. Y'all could just call and talk. I wish I could.
On a landline, brother.
The whole
landline.
Like 10 years older than me that you are. That's that just things got more complicated. And they get more complicated now. But I was like when I was a teenager, I was the overthinker. Like, I'd look at the text and I'd be like, hey, how are you doing today? And if a girl responds good, smiley face. I'm like, what's the smiley face mean? Is that like, is she happy? Is it like a really big smile? Is it like yeah, I'm smiling because this guy's annoying and I'm just trying to get him to stop talking to me? Is it like, oh, I love this guy? So like you're uncertain where you stand. So now you don't know, like, what's the next action? How do you approach this? And same thing when you lose a child. If you don't communicate with your wife, you don't know where you stand, you're not going to know what action to take. And how can I love her best? Is it making dinner for her? Is it sitting down and trying to communicate? Is it, giving her space? Like, whatever it is, if we're doing that with God, and like you're talking about with morning preparation at the end of the last episode, if we're not doing that and we don't know where we stand with Christ, we're not able to go out confidently and do anything, whether it's stand firm for him in a tough work week, in a relationship with our wives, with our kids that are living that's contentious. We don't know how to lead out with strength because we're not prepared, we're not ready, and we don't have that gospel truth fastened on our feet that can keep us anchored in the truth of the Lord there.
Love it, dude. Love it. So this week, let's think about those few parts of the armor of God that we talked about today. The belt of truth, breastplate of righteousness, and the feet fitted with the readiness of the gospel. How can you implement those things into your daily life this week? We're not going to tell you. We're going to ask you to think about it, dwell on it, pray about it, so that way you can be doing those things for yourself. So that way you can take your stand against evil, and so you can advance in your daily life. So thank y'all for joining us today. We're going to do one more episode in this series, and so we hope that you'll join us for that next time. Make sure you check out us on the social media platforms. Email us, message us if you have any questions, or if you want us to cover any topics you can think of. And certainly check out my books, Where Books Are Sold, Every Little Thing, 6 Small Steps to Perfect Peace, or Thy Will Be Done, Trusting God in the Midst of Suffering, Pain, or Loss. Thank y'all for joining us today. Let's not be lost. Let's be found in Him.